Okay, I'm back to doing it the old-fashioned way, in low light, quietly. Um, Gearing down, and I'm watching a man named Joe Hollis, who established this amazing spot where he's practiced herbalism for 50 years, living off grid. And he's talking about a concept known as forest bathing. And this is popular in the East. I know of it from Japanese culture. And they've studied people who've gone out and spent time just being out in the woods, just among the trees, walking through the forest, and they've monitored the changes in their brain, and their blood work is different. Their I think it was immunological factors were increased for up to, I believe, 2 weeks after going out and forest bathing. And I remember hearing about this at a time in my life where that sounded like paradise, just to be able to go walk through the trees, right? I think I might be part wood sprite. So this really spoke to me. And I really couldn't free up the time to do such a thing. So it just sounded like a dream, and I'd almost forgotten about it until I heard Joe Hollis talking about it. And he also had said something earlier in the piece about having lived in Borneo and like learned how to live on the land with the people, and how when he got back he had really bad culture shock, not going there but coming home. And I really related to that. He said coming into the shopping malls and the glut of everything. Yeah, and so that idea was still floating in my head from earlier in the piece. And then he started talking about forest bathing. And I think the two thoughts kind of collided. And I thought, how much is just our modern way of life an ongoing low grade trauma to us? That maybe our brainwaves don't become different when we're in the forest from how human brainwaves should be or have been historically, but rather the way they are, the way we live now, is actually different from most of human history. And we probably would have only seen this during times of stress where perhaps the crops were not plentiful enough, or there was a threat of invasion, or, there was some like low grade threat to survival. You probably see the brainwaves we have getting up on a Tuesday, getting our coffee, and going to work. And I think that we talk about a mental health crisis as if there's a contagion of depression and anxiety, and that's not something you can see in the blood work. That's not tangible. And I think that saying we have these sicknesses and we have to treat them is like putting a band-aid on a brain tumor. There's so much about how our organism works that we don't understand. We've just started living like this a hot second ago. Our whole existence as humans is like a blip on a blip on a blip on a screen that's so much bigger than we can comprehend. Um, we haven't existed very long at all, and for all the time that we have been extant, we've never lived like this. This is we're in the middle of the train going off the rails, right? We're midair. We don't know where this lands, but you can see that this way of life is so deleterious to us in so many ways. And the farther we come away from the natural world, the farther out of touch we become with our own natures. And being taken out of our essential selves, I think, makes us incredibly susceptible to influences that don't benefit us, influences that may benefit somebody else, but come at our own expense. And having spent some time out in the trees recently, I got to go camping twice in the last 2 months, and I don't need modern technology to tell you that that's had a huge impact on my brain waves. I know they've shifted, and it doesn't feel, it's the opposite of coming home and having culture shock. It's like spending time in the trees is like coming home and being at home. It's familiar. It's not all this crazy stuff that we've become conditioned to an extent, but not really. And so, yeah, a late night musing on how I think modern life is traumatic on a good day, and how looking at how we've evolved and reconnecting with some of the, mm, how do I explain it? They're almost like signals we read, and we're not conscious of it, but when we're in nature, we're taking in so much information from nature we're not even aware of, but it's indicating things to us. And it's like, okay, I have a circadian rhythm disorder, which means my biorhythms are out of whack. My biological clock doesn't work right. And one of the more notable features is how that impacts my sleep, where I don't really have a good natural sleep cycle, and it's on a different part of the clock if you leave me to my natural rhythms. Um, and I have to work against that by using cues from my environment. And that's why I have the lights down low right now, and I'm kind of breaking the rule, blasting my cones and rods with bright light right now, but just for a minute, just for this. I have to use things like light and temperature when I eat, when I'm active. I have to externally manage systems that for other people just have their own endogenous rhythm that like nobody thinks about. They're like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed at bedtime, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to get up, and when it's morning, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have this level of activity and eat at these times. And if that shifts, it doesn't mean their sleep's going to go off track. For me, it does. If I don't have these bumpers, um, it becomes very difficult for me to have any kind of not just sleep rhythm. It affects my temperature, my states of wakefulness. It impacts um, all kinds of things. It's the whole, it's the tick tock that keeps the whole thing running, and it doesn't really tick tock quite right for me. So the reason I mention this is a couple of things. One, when I'm in an extended blackout, that the power's out, not me personally, don't party like that. Um, but when there's a blackout and everything's quiet and it's not artificially lit and loud and all these other things, I tend to entrain to a more regular schedule. Another thing is out in the trees. I suddenly had a very normal day night schedule, still a little shifted, but really regular and easy to maintain. And the third thing is, I talk about all these little cues, these Zeitgeibers, they're called, when you're talking about sleep medicine. Time givers, I think it is, right? Believe it's German for time giver. Um, it gives us these little signals, and I'm thinking that when we're in the natural world and we're picking up all these other little signals, they're not necessarily Zeitgeibers, but they're context givers. They give us context of where we are and what our bodies need to be doing in a moment, where we should put our attention. And it helps us to be we just naturally become very present. It is what it is. You're there, you're immersed in it, and it's so real and it's so absolute. I don't have any trouble focusing on it when I'm there. Um, but when I get back into the normal world, into civilization, all of a sudden my biology goes out of whack and it takes my mind with it, which is very frustrating because I enjoy having calm and clarity and all these other things that I really do feel I fight for a lot harder when I'm trying to get from store to store or deal with a list of phone calls I have to make or these other things that we take for granted as being normal. They aren't. This isn't how humans have done until, like I said, a hot second ago. So it's something to bear in mind, and I guess I would strongly recommend finding the ways in which we can go touch grass, so to speak. Whatever that is, it's almost anywhere you are, there's at least a park nearby. There's somewhere you can go out at night and get under the stars. There's somewhere you even if it's just putting a container garden on the deck of your apartment. That I did that at one point, and it made such a difference for me to be able to go out and sit with the plants and the fresh air, and just be in that mindset, be more connected to that when I couldn't really afford to be out doing things at a deeper level. I couldn't go camping, I couldn't go hiking, I couldn't just live in an environment where I was naturally surrounded by all of that. So even the little things I think make a big difference. And so I wanted to share that as I am rushing to get this bright, bright light out of my eyes and try to keep a good schedule. But I wanted to share while it was on my mind. All right, that's what I got. Thank you for coming along. Till the next round. Bye bye.